Welcome to the Digital Executives Hub podcast. Today, we are privileged to host Jarek Pilarczyk. Jarek is an accomplished business leader, credited with 2 successful business exits. He's also a passionate mentor, dedicated to nurturing the next generation of entrepreneurs. We will dive into creating a foundable company, the importance of marketing, and why mentorship is crucial in business. This episode is a must-listen for any digital innovation enthusiast. Let's dive in. Hey, Jarek.
Hello, Paul.
Hey. First of all, thank you for showing up for this interview. I believe this would be super beneficial for the young people starting their journey with different kind of businesses. Most likely technological businesses,
or
right?
Digital.
Digital businesses. So I want to take this opportunity and understand what can you share with the audience based on your experiences, because you have successfully started, founded, and then sold 2 companies, right?
Yeah. I did that, and I think that's what they're calling a serial entrepreneur. At least that's what I heard.
Yeah, and for me, that's a great validation of somebody's skill set. Because if you do it once, maybe you are lucky. If you do it twice, that means that you did something right and you did it repeatedly. So this is the opportunity for us to have a discussion about what have you learned during this journey, but also what can you share with people that are just starting their journey and trying to do what you did twice.
Yeah, I'm happy to share the things that I learned. I think it's quite important also when you look upon the community. It's also important to give something back. This is something that I'm currently thinking about, how I can give back to the community, to the young entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
The knowledge, the ideas that I have now with my experience, so they can succeed.
Sure, this makes a perfect sense, and I believe at some point, if you have run a successful business or businesses, at some point, people decide that this is the time to give back. This is the time that means to me that you are in the right place. To share the knowledge that you have gained, through the years. So let's start with the most, I would say, obvious question, right? Because all the startups out there, they have different kind of ideas, but how to validate the idea, or how to create a company that will actually eventually get funded?
Yeah, so I think it's in the beginning, it's all about actually problem that you're trying to solve.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that not many people are kind of concentrating on when they're starting the company. That was the same for me. I was looking upon, I stumbled upon some kind of a problem that I had or some friend had, and kind of decided, okay, I'm a, IT guy, so let's create a software to solve it, right? But the thing that I didn't ask myself then is it this problem big enough so that it is even worth to be solved? Is it like something that a couple of companies or a couple of guys have, and I'm starting to build software, which is not that cheap to be built. Of course, if you're doing that yourself and not getting any remuneration, that might be called cheap. But if you really want to do it professionally, then you need to have enough customers that will buy it. So I think that's the main thing. You shouldn't focus first on the technology, on how you're going to build the software, what it's going to do. You should focus more about what is this problem about, why it's so important for the future customers that you're solving this problem, and are they really willing to pay for it?
Okay, sure, but that sounds kind of obvious. most likely not everybody's doing this, but one advice, how to validate that this problem is actually worth solving, that there is enough people with that problem with money that will pay for it.
Yeah, so I think that in the beginning, it's really important to talk to other people, right? It's really about actually understanding what is their so-called job to be done. So what they're really focusing on in their companies, in their everyday life, and trying to find out what is the key pain that they're experiencing while they're trying to do their jobs. And I've heard this comparison saying that you either can have a painkiller or a vitamin. And a vitamin is something that it's nice to take, but it's not something that you will have a real reason to go for it.
Yeah.
If you have a headache or something else, the painkiller is something that you will directly go for, and you will just strive to get something to get rid of the pain.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. When you're talking to people, try to understand how important this pain is. Because if it's like on the 10th thing on their list, they're not going to pay attention. Solve it.
If it's number 10, it's most likely a vitamin. It's not really a pain, right?
Exactly. Yes, I think that's important. That you should really focus on the things that are on the top of the list.
Okay, let's say that there is one founder or couple founders, right? That they trying to start a project together. It seems that if we're talking about technology, there is always 2-3 technical founders, right? And then from my experience, for that business to be actually up and running and making money, this team has to be diversified, right?
Yeah, I think this is a topic that everybody is talking about, about team diversity and so on. But there's not that many that actually understand what it means. And of course, if you look upon starting the company, even when I was starting the first company, what was the easiest thing for me to get people on board? That was my friends from my studies, right? Because I knew them, they were capable of also programming, so it was easier for us to do something together. But in the end, what you will find out is that basically you need different set of skills to create a successful company, right? So when you had like 3 tech guys doing software, and then you were supposed to start doing marketing or sales, then okay, so who actually had experience in that? Nobody actually, because nobody was coming from that kind of a world or skill set or even studies. We didn't even study marketing.
Right.
We had only technical classes. So everything that we've learned about was actually how to develop software.
Sure.
And even if in the beginning it's quite nice to have this alignment, then you will understand that when you are going forward, you will start lacking the skills that are really necessary for you to succeed.
Absolutely. But most founders are probably not aware of that, right? At the beginning, because they're excited with the project, you kind of need technology to solve the business problem. But then how do you advertise it? How do you sell it? That's just a different type of skill set than the technical part, right?
Yeah, definitely. This is not something you're concentrating first on because you're thinking about building a technology solution if your background is in technology. So it might be a bit different when you're coming from a kind of a different world, right? And this is also an interesting topic, actually, when you look upon, even what's happening in Poland. We have those universities or technical universities, and usually if you look upon the communities, they're not really mixing. They're like, if I'm studying at the technical university, I have friends that are studying at technical university, right? So we're kind of missing actually this mixture, that there's somebody coming from the other world, like let's say, I don't know, medical studies. And then he actually starts to work with somebody from IT studies, right? And then it's much more probable they will figure out something interesting, because that's where, those two words are kind of getting connected.
Yeah, right? They have to be combined at some point, because you won't be able to really scale your company if you don't have all the skill sets, right?
Yep.
And because now that I'm looking at the history, Steve Jobs needed Wozniak and Wozniak needed Steve Jobs, right? Completely different skill sets, but only because they worked together, they were able to create this company.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good example, and I think there's many more examples if you look into those successful companies. And also, you don't need to have everybody on board from the very beginning, but it's important for you to think about it, to start searching also for people that can join the company. So like if you look upon the, let's say, cap table of your company, like, so who has how many percentages in the company? So if you will just get rid of all of your percentages in the very beginning and you will end up having 4 technical founders, that might create a lot of issues for you to actually get on board somebody that might know much more about the market or have a sales skills or marketing skills that can really help you to build a company. So this is, from that perspective, quite important, that also think about future people that can join the company and help you make it successful.
Awesome. Okay, we just spoke about different founders, that they should have different skill sets, because the future of the company depends on the synergy between different skill sets. And then let's say that you were bootstrapped startup that didn't take any money from the investors, but now you reach the point that this is the time that you kind of have to reach out to investors. How to decide who would be the first investor that you should let in to the business with you?
Yeah, I think it's very strongly depends on the stage you're at with your business, right? And also, as you mentioned here, bootstrapped and so on. It's not that all the businesses needs to get money right away, or even needs to have an investor. You might also build a successful business without any investment. My first company, I did not have any investors. I just kind of developed the company and that's and successfully sold it to the investor. So basically, if you look upon the possible options that you have, I think it's important to look upon what else you're going to get besides money. So especially in the early stage of the company, it's not the money that you're after. You're after a knowledge, a network that will help you to validate whether your idea is good or not. You also can look into what kind of people you might work with, what kind of a knowledge they can bring in. So this is really important. It's not only about the money, And also, if you look upon let's say if we go towards the VC investors, because the things that I talk about for the early stage companies is more like accelerators. This is a good place to go for, right? To get all the knowledge, network, and the idea how to validate your product or validate your idea with the market. If you look upon the later stage, for example, and you want to get the VC money, this is also interesting, because even if you don't look upon kind of a knowledge that they can bring in, you should still look upon their capabilities to support you actually to get a next rounds, next financing, right? Because in the VC world, it is not about just getting money once and that's all. If you go into the VC game, you also need to be ready to kind of get next rounds, because it's all about, at some point, it's all about the speed of the development of the company, because as usually the competition is out there. You just need to outcompete others. Yeah.
So it's easy to validate, that you're going to get that much amount of money. How do you validate the other part of support? You just mentioned that the money is just a part of the support. What to ask for, accept the money? What kind of help the VC or whoever is helping at that point? What kind of questions to ask?
Yeah, it's not only about the question, it's also about the research that you will do. You can check what kind of companies the VC fund has already invested in, right? So how they're developing. Are they getting next rounds? What kind of people are behind those companies? When you are in contact with the VC fund, you can also talk to people that are, partners in the VC, and you can directly talk to them, find out what are their experiences, what kind of a network they're coming from, right? So those are kind of the things that you can do to verify whether you will get money or there's something more that you can count on when it comes to the support.
Sure, but
company development.
Is it like that there will be some some VCs that are just good, and then everybody would like to work with them, right? But maybe your idea is good but not great, so you'll have to settle for some other VC? Like, is this could be the case that like the very well known and best venture capital, they will only accept the very best ideas, and at some point, if you cannot work with them, you kind of have to look for plan B, maybe, also getting money and yeah.
Yeah, that's true. There is also a competition to get to the best VCs, right? So it all depends. Where is your what's the stage of the development of your project? How much work you did yourself, prove that actually it's worth to invest in your project. And this is also kind of connected to what we have been discussing in the very beginning, like what you should focus on in the very beginning of your project. And you should not put too much effort just to build technology solution. You should focus more to prove your investors that the problem you're trying to solve is big enough for actually VC funds to be interested to invest into, right? So the more you will do to actually prove the problem is there and it's big, it's much better than the stage of your technology solution developing.
Yeah, that kind of tells me that you should start with an MVP, that you should start with, validation of your idea and the fact that there are people that are willing to pay for it, not focusing on having a perfect, perfect software behind it, right? Because there's a lot of software involved in tech startups. Yes or no? Would you start with an MVP? Or it seems obvious, but on the other hand, I see that this is not obvious. So, yeah.
No, I can say that I think that people are jumping into building MVP too quickly. Because if you look upon MVP, so what it means, it's a minimum viable product, right? So it's for technology founder, what it means is actually software or some other technology solution that tries to solve the problem that the customer has. So instead of finding out more about the problem and the ways you can solve it, you're actually focusing more on starting to solve the problem. So that's why I'm thinking about actually changing a bit this abbreviation of MVP into more something like most valuable proof. So it's not like what is this product that you're going to build, but what you have done to prove that the problem is worth solving.
Interesting. Interesting, because there is basically no definition of MVP, right? The MVP could be anything, right?
Yeah, it could be, but of course everybody knows MVP as a minimum viable product, because that's the kind of shortcut that everybody was using in the VC world, the startup world. And you have a lot of those, like MVP, market product fit, and so on. So all of them are actually used to just simplify naming the stage, the company.
Sure.
Right.
So from your experience, how do you do it? How do you validate that the problem that you're solving is actually big enough and the market is willing to pay for it?
Yeah. So actually, I really like the idea that Alex Osterwalder has introduced with Strategizer. And they're talking about this kind of a business experiment. And what is actually the business experiment? It's actually something that you can, some kind of an action you can take, either an interview or, I don't know, something that is kind of pretending to be the product, like, I don't know, maybe a video that shows how the product works or something. And just try to go out there to the market and kind of getting feedback, right? Or even going into the conference that is related to what you're trying to build, and just try to talk to as many people as possible, or even take the stage, and see what kind of a feedback you're going to get.
Yeah,
I think that's a crucial problem that we are observing, that people are always thinking that their idea is like a gold, so you cannot talk about it because they were going to steal it. And that's the kind of a problem in the mindset, because it's not about the idea. Usually it's about how you're executing on the idea.
That's one thing. But I also believe, because I met lots of founders, I believe that they are afraid that the idea that they spend so much time developing is not great. They really don't want to find out that this is not the best idea in the world. They live in this bubble that they created, and they are terrified, of finding out what's the truth, about this this solution. And then, secondly, not everybody feels comfortable, with going out and sharing that idea. So I see two problems with validating this idea. First of all, some people, they don't want to find out that whatever they created is not gonna change the world. And then secondly, personally, they don't feel comfortable going out there and talking about it because nobody likes rejection. Nobody likes. So I don't know how to approach it to convince those people that are not feeling great about going out. Anything that we can tell them, so they are more open to actually doing it, maybe saving a lot of time, a lot of money. It's not going to be comfortable, but it's going to be very useful for the business.
Yeah, it's that as you're saying, this is a problem of mindset, but also maybe personality. So if we go back also to this diversity in the team, right? It's actually good to have the extrovert and also that is more willing to talk to people. Like you gave an example of Steve Jobs and Wozniak, right? Probably Wozniak was not the one that was capable of talking to potential customers, but that was actually what the Steve Jobs was doing great. So that will be one example of how you can actually overcome that, have a right co-founder that can help you. And the other thing is, if you look upon getting to know whether you will succeed or not. So would you like actually to learn after 3 years spending number of hours building something that is actually worthless, or you would rather like to find out much quicker that it doesn't make sense to build this particular solution? But actually in the startup wars, you probably, we're all hearing about pivoting. So whenever you actually learn that it's not worth, or this approach is not worth to be solved, and you still have an options to, take some learnings out of it and see whether you can kind of change your idea. And if I look upon the things that I've been also doing, I actually did not develop the businesses that I thought I'm going to develop. I had to kind of pivot on the way and adapt the market.
Okay. So most likely you've met a lot of CEOs, right?
Yep.
You were a CEO at some point as well, and probably a lot of startup founders that are also CEOs of the companies. They try to maybe manage the whole business, but would you advise them on what to focus on at different stages of the development of the company? Because it seems like you're responsible for everything. But on the other hand, if you're responsible for everything, what are you really responsible for?
Yeah, I think that in the beginning, you are responsible for everything, right? If you're starting a company, usually doesn't have a big teams that can help you with everything that you have to do. And sometimes actually one of the main problems for starting the company is also that they're starting to grow too fast. So what it means, you're starting to actually engage people into the company, even though you are not yet on the stage of the company development that you should engage more people, because more people means more problems, more people to manage, more more communication and everything. So it's actually not that good to start hiring too many people too soon. And when you're a CEO, you need to focus on you need to put the focus on the right things on the right stage of the company. So if you're really on the early stage where you have the idea, one of your kind of a first thing is to actually validate the problem that we talked about, right? So Steve Blank also kind of nicely, talks about stages of the company. And actually this stage he called search, right? So you're actually searching for a repeatable business model. So what does it mean? You're actually searching to validate the problem, to develop the right solution to solve the problem. And then you're searching for a repeatable process, how you can sell solution, right? And even he has this nice saying that how you're going to recognize that actually you you have you're after the search stage, and he's saying that if the sales doesn't require heroic efforts from founders to sell, that's quite interesting, because a lot of CEOs or founders are actually counting that when they have a product, they will just hire somebody and they will sell for them, and that's a completely wrong thinking, because the only person that can sell the best in the very beginning is actually the founder and the CEO. And if you know how you can sell, then you can start to engage people and, start to actually grow the company.
Yeah, somehow the founder has to transfer the knowledge to people that in the future will be responsible for sales, right? Yeah. But if he originated the idea, probably at the beginning he's the best person, to sell it to the world.
Yeah, it's like, again, with this example, it's like Steve Jobs would have a best idea to sell it and say, okay, I will hire somebody now and let him do the work, right?
Yeah, it would be difficult to find somebody like Steve Jobs because he was brilliant. But yeah, you're right.
So this is just to, kind of give an example. You can have people in your team that are good at sales, of course, if you don't feel like great with it, right? But don't think about just hiring somebody external and count on it that he will now be the best seller and make you succeed.
Sure. A question that might be a little sensitive, I would say. The question about, how to look at different problems and actually, start dealing with the big problems, versus focusing on the small, easy stuff and kind of ignoring the big, the elephant in the room. Any advice there? Because I strongly believe that because, dealing with the big problems involves being outside of the comfort zone, we maybe focus on the little stuff, but and we just keep ignoring the elephant that is in the room.
Yeah, that's true. Going out of our comfort zone to deal with the things that are not easy to be dealt with, it's not that everybody has in their blood, right? It's actually quite exhausting as well. So if you're a CEO, you like to jump into simple problems because you know how to do that and the outcomes. And I actually liked, there was some kind of a saying from, I think, Elon Musk that said that at some point the work of a CEO is to find the shittest problem that nobody wants to take care of and actually solve it, right? So this tells you that in this role, you're not responsible for just keeping the simple processes moving on. You're responsible for finding the elephant in the room and try to solve it.
Makes a lot of sense, because if you don't do it, nobody will do it, right? In your company, this is your company, so you should absolutely take care of it. So we did talk about sales. I personally believe this is the most important part of the whole process, because you can have shitty product but good sales and you can still make it. You can have a great product and no sales and you won't make it. But what about marketing? Because it seems that marketing becomes more and more relevant. Still, FaceTime with the client is important, to validate the idea. But then at some point, to scale your idea, you need marketing. What's your take on marketing?
Yeah, I think that in today's world, especially when we are talking about digital solutions, like dividing marketing and sales is just a wrong concept. I would say that we're in the age of digital sales, which is actually marketing and sales combined. And one of the things is that when you're actually a CEO and you're at the stage where you're growing the company, one of the main thing about the time you're supposed to spend is actually on this kind of a marketing and sales effort. Let's call it digital sales, because what it means to sell. It actually means that you need to reach to as many companies or as many people that have the problem you're trying to solve, right? So you cannot do it just by traveling from door to door. It's more like about being able to get through the noise that is out there, and with the internet, it's not really easy, right?
How do you get through the noise? Like what platform? What channel? Like what would you do? Write a blog post, write a LinkedIn post, or
Yeah, it's getting more and more complicated from that perspective because, there are some companies that succeeded because they were capable of using those new channels that were still kind of cheap to be used. Like when the AdWords started, right? It was kind of really cheap to use AdWords to promote yourself. But now, if you want to repeat success of a company that use AdWords, you would probably spend so much money that maybe it's not worth it, right? So then, of course, the social media and so on and so on. So basically, what is important in marketing is that you need to stand out. You need to make it differently than the others. And, when we look upon what's happening in the marketing lately, we know that kind of a video is becoming a new standard for the way we're communicating, right? So even when you have now the ChatGPT, writing an article or writing a blog post or something, it's like so simple that there will be more and more noise. And the thing is that the attention of people is not increasing, right? So you need to be different in the way you're communicating. And also, the second important thing in the marketing is also that you should not talk about the product. You should talk about the pain and the problem that your customer has. Because otherwise, they will not be able to understand what you're talking about.
Absolutely. And that video, which I believe is the best tool, for marketing and sales, is important because more and more companies in B2B and people in B2C, they are using this video to educate themselves. So they gathering all the information before they even talk to your salespeople. And I think this is super important because you can meet them during their journey with your message. That it doesn't have to be salesy. It's just a message that you have put together, recorded, provided value, and they just found it looking for some kind of solution.
That's true. It's not the world when somebody comes to the car dealer and saying, okay, I want a car. And there's a blank sheet, and then you can start like talking about, oh, this car has this engine and so on, and those features. And rather, it's completely different, right? They already seen something in the internet. They've been watching a movie or a review or something, and they actually are quite well educated. So if you want to influence the decision that the customer is taking to buy, then you need to also be in that process with the customer. So it's not about the sales process. It's about buying process, and you need to get into the buying process of your customer. And that's why it's so important to have those marketing activities we're talking about.
Yep, and activities that are not directed at sales. They help with sales, right? But they're not directed at sales. Okay. And another topic that might be super interesting for the founders, that very often, they come up with some kind of idea, and the idea is great, but there are bigger companies, maybe even corporations that are, dealing with the same kind of problem. And then the founder is like, I have such a good idea, but the market is saturated. There are those big companies that have similar solutions. Should they be afraid of that competition, corporations, or not really?
I would say that there are different type of corporations, and there are some corporations that might be good in finding new kind of problems and solutions that they're building. But in many times, it's actually the problem of corporations is that they are not really focused on the things that you're trying to do. So they have a lot of things they have to take care of, a lot of people on board, a lot of communication process, and a lot of problems they have inside. So what is actually the main advantage of your company or your small company is actually the focus and agility to actually change while you're developing, right? And also this kind of a failure in the corporation world, failing with something, it's like no go. People are like they're just managed in a way that they should not fail, right? And when you're building something new, you have to actually accept failures on the way. So that's why I would say that in many cases, it is actually not possible that the corporation will be able to be faster than you developing something regarding your idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I remember this example, I don't know, given by someone. I can't remember who told me that, but there are corporations, and I heard that BMW was doing that. They knew that the corporations are not super agile, and and they are built to survive, not built to change the world. So they created like startups that would be like internal, small internal companies, but they would be in touch with the mothership, which was the BMW in that case, and they would give them certain projects that they didn't really have to go through all the procedures like all the other projects in the corporations, and that project was just skyrocketing because they wouldn't have to go through all the formalities, through all the levels of people that would have to approve the budgets and everything, and that was like super agile approach. So there are big corporations that are assigning those super important projects or projects that they want to develop faster than anyone else. They're actually creating those small, let's call them startups, but they are the part of the big corporation, but they don't have to follow all the rules, and that's how they are ahead of the competition. So that's
that's one of the ideas how the big corporations are trying to deal with this issue of not being able to do it in-house, so to say, and they're trying to kind of create those separate units that are trying to develop something. But I think there is also a bit of a trap way of thinking, because are you actually have enough leaders that are capable of doing that, right? In your company, because they've been working in a completely different setup. They've been working like they had a salary, they did not have, they actually had to learn how not to fail and so on. So whether they have a the mindset that is required to make a startup. So probably more successful are actually those startup programs that the corporations are doing with the external companies. That's why they're often they have those accelerators actually. So we talk about how to start with your idea. Maybe sometimes it's actually about going into one of those accelerators that is driven by a bigger company, right? Because they might have an access to the right technology, network, people, and so on, and that actually can help you really to succeed. So I would say that, of course, they can try different things, but in the end, it's also about the entrepreneur that is running the whole thing.
Okay, so we should not be afraid of the bigger companies, kind of setting up rules in our market that we try to conquer.
I think there's also one more advantage that you might have that's hard to achieve for a corporation. And it's actually that you can actually engage people with the shares of the company. And for the corporation, it's a bit harder to give away.
Some companies do it.
Some companies are trying to do it, of course. And there is this whole employee stock option plan also that, employees can get the kind of a shares for developing something. When the company is much bigger, it's much harder, and the value of the shares that you're going to get is not as high as when you're running a startup. So this is also the mechanism that you can actually get to engage people, right? And the second thing about it is also that if you look upon this getting people on board, when there's still this corporation kind of attachment to the whole thing, you will probably also get people to just get on board because they can work for a corporation and it will look nice in their kind of a CV. But they're not necessarily the ones that are hard workers and will help you to actually succeed.
Yeah, 100% agree. How often do you see startups that do not understand or do not have a clear value proposition for the customers?
Okay, yeah, that's I think that's the most tricky part, because defining the value proposition in a way that actually your customer understands it, it's something that you need to develop with the customers. It's not that you're going to figure out that on your own. You will always have a bias of your own way of thinking. And that's why we're talking about this pains and finding the problems, and the difficulty there is actually you need to be able to listen to the customers and really understand their way of thinking about it, not the way you're thinking about it.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's one of the biggest challenge, to actually switch your kind of a way of thinking and be like one of your customers and see whether this is interesting. I actually remember that there's this nice kind of experiment you can do, and just try to even develop some kind of a landing page about the thing that you're doing, and then try to show it to somebody that has completely no clue about what you're doing. And I bet that he will not be able to tell what you're doing.
Yeah, that makes like unless you can make it so that he understands, then the value is kind of good, to show it to the public.
Yeah, but also there is this, I don't know, maybe people are a bit afraid, but we're focusing more about talking about features of a product, but not really the value they're bringing. I think there was like kind of a great example I have seen with the metal fork. There was this kind of a comparison. So how the Germans are going to talk about it, and how the US guys are going to talk.
Mm-hmm.
Germans were talking about it's metal, it's lightweight, it helps you to eat the food, and so on. And the kind of US are going to tell more like, okay, this will help you to eat better, faster, or they will try to show you the value behind using this fork, not what kind of features it actually has from the engineering perspective.
Yes, it's this the battle between benefits and features, right? The feature of feature is completely different, and feature doesn't really tells you how you're gonna feel. Feature doesn't really tells you what would be the benefit, right? It's just a feature. So, but you're right. Most of the companies, they focus on features versus benefits. I have another really good question that I'm trying to find people to talk to, and it's regarding the people that you hire, right? I've seen that I've been involved in several startups, and my experience was the bigger the title, the more fancy the title. You know where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah, of course.
It's just usually not going to end very well if you are going for the people that have those fancy titles. For some reason, they cannot really perform whenever you're starting your journey, your startup or business.
Yeah, definitely. Hiring people, it's one of the challenges that founders are going to have in early stage companies, because it's not about the title that somebody is going to have. It's about work that he's capable to do, the work that he's capable to do. And when you're in this recruitment process, you should really pay attention to what this person puts the emphasis on. Whether he actually cares about the title that he is going to have, whether he cares more like for the salary than actually what kind of shares he can get for the company. So you really want people that are looking upon the value that they can get from this ESOP program instead of how big the salary is going to be, because that will tell you something about whether they are living in what you're trying to do. And the second thing is that I have noticed is whenever you have somebody coming from a bigger company and he get used to working with the big structures and a lot of people supporting everything, it's actually quite hard for them to switch to a smaller company again. So, sometimes it's more about recruiting for potential, so how this person might grow, than actually all the experiences that he has on his previous roles.
Because those experiences might be irrelevant at this point because they were gathered 10 years ago, and it's a completely different environment. But there's one thing that that I really want to understand. Let's say that you're starting your business journey, but you would like to use some of the experienced people. Like you just said that, there's options for shares, but some people that are like really, really good at what they do, they might have some expectations that would require some, money upfront. Is there a way to make it happen? Because I strongly believe that there are people that are very good for your company, but they are not kind of willing to take the risk, and only, be compensated in the shares of the company. I know it's a difficult question because it all depends, but I still want to understand how to approach it.
Of course, it's good to also search for some advisors or consultants that can help you. And it's all about finding the right setup for the person that you want to work with, right? Because sometimes it's like you can pay a really high fee if somebody has a very specific knowledge that you need. That's all. You can just shake hands and forget about it. And the other thing is if you would like to have somebody that is involved more long-term. And, in this startup world, let's say, it's kind of there's also this kind of idea of business angels. And those business angels are usually people that are coming early into the companies and usually have some kind of entrepreneurial background. So they developed the company before and maybe have a knowledge from your area of where you're trying to develop it. So this is also an idea how you can engage somebody more kind of experienced and does not need to pay. Actually, he will pay a bit for the shares even sometimes. It depends, of course, on the setups, because sometimes it's also some kind of a vesting program you can create for an advisor that over a time he's able also to get some shares. But it's also important not to give away everything like too early. So you need to be really careful how you're engaging those people. And sometimes I agree, it might be hard. You will not be able to pay for it, and you need to search for somebody else.
But that's interesting that you don't have to maybe pay up front. At some point, you can actually get money from the person that's helping you, right? That's a completely different approach, right? So thanks for sharing that, because if the idea is good enough, and if you find the right person with the right experience, and that person will see the benefits, then maybe that person can be involved on a different level. It doesn't have to be 40 hours a week. It could be like an advisory board or something like that, and that's good. Like I wouldn't think of that.
Yeah, this is also part of the validation. It's also a proof that actually you might be doing something worth doing.
If somebody is experienced and that person believes in the product and is willing to invest their time, that means that it is a validation. Just like you said, there are companies that are doing great, and there are companies that are not doing so great. So some of them make it, some of them fail. What happened that the ones that made it made it? Like what's the secret sauce? What's the difference between those two categories?
I don't think there's a magic wand that you can use to be successful. And lately, I actually participated in the InfoShare conference, and there was the Vern Harnish, which is running this whole idea of. He actually wrote a book, Scaling Up. He's running actually this community of trying to help founders to scale up. And I think he brought in like three important elements around which companies are succeeding or not. And one of those things was about the alignment of a team and ability to focus. So how the team is actually focusing on the right problems, the right things that needs to be taken care of. And the second thing was about kind of a metrics that you as a kind of a team are measuring. So what are those metrics, and actually being able to kind of look upfront what kind of metrics you want to achieve, right?
Metrics, you mean like KPIs or something different?
It's more like about what kind of a data you're observing. So if you're doing some kind of a business, so whether you're, I don't know, observing how many leads you're getting or how many leads are going through from one stage to another stage. So understanding why they're dropping out. So all the things that are important in building the processes that helps you to understand how you can actually get better, right? But the tricky part is that you can actually start observing the wrong things as well. And that's why it's important to not only gather the data, today we're talking about data-driven companies. Actually, the data is a crucial thing to get a competitive advantage. And if you're observing the wrong data and taking the wrong conclusions, it might be great in having those data, but still you're not going to succeed, right?
Yeah. So you're collecting the data, analyzing the data because you want to make better decisions. But also it's important to make faster decisions.
Yeah, and that's the last part, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you need to also be able to make a decision fast. We were talking about it, why you don't have to be scared of corporation. This is probably one of the elements, because they're so slow in the decision process that you will be able actually to pivot 3 times when they will still be thinking about whether it's worth to change something or not.
Right.
And there was this saying actually, you cannot grow 10 times doing repeatedly the same things.
Uh-huh.
So what does it mean? You need to be able to change constantly when you're developing.
Yeah, absolutely. The agility of organizations, I think this is the future. That's why we see more and more companies that are not with us anymore. They were big companies before, but through the process of, making this decision process difficult and avoiding change, avoiding the risk a little bit, they just becoming irrelevant with time, and that happens more and more. The span of companies, being profitable is just decreasing because of the fact that everything is changing, and if you're not changing, you're becoming irrelevant with time.
I think it's becoming more challenging because this change that we're talking about is getting on speed. So it's sometimes some years ago when you have founded the company, you could be much more calm that if you're not changing, it will not kind of get you out of business that fast.
Uh-huh.
But in today's world, everything is changing so fast. If you're not changing, that means that you're actually going to get out of business. So I also like this saying that if you're not moving forward, it means that you're actually you are behind.
Yes.
Because
everybody else is moving
exactly
forward. Yeah. And then Albert Einstein said at some point that if the definition of craziness or something like that, if you keep doing the same thing and expecting different results, that means you're crazy. And I wanna start with that, because a lot of companies, they keep doing the same thing, but their idea is to grow 10x, 20x, just have this super growth in the nearest future, but they do not learn from the mistakes they make. They do not observe the market. So the idea is to grow like crazy, but what they do is same thing. They repeat the same thing that doesn't really bring in the results. Why is that happening? Everybody dreams big, but also a lot of companies, they try to do the same thing that they've done yesterday, but they hope for the 10x results.
I think it's all about this organization culture that you're creating in the company. If people are looking upon, let's say, revenue as their kind of a North Star, just think about, okay, how much revenue we can generate, and this is the most important thing. So actually people are afraid of changing things because they are afraid that if they will do something differently, they can actually make this revenue to drop now, but it may actually create 10 times the revenue in 1 year or 2.
Yes.
But now they will suffer from the kind of a KPI that the revenue is dropping down, right? And if you look upon how the stock markets are working, if there is a company that is on the stock market and then suddenly revenue goes down, then there's like, oh my God, what's happening? We need to sell. It's probably going down, the company and so on. So I think there's also this wrong perception of even the investors, especially in the public markets, that they're looking upon wrong things because only the financial indicators now in this moment are telling them whether it's worth or not to investing, which is not true. we all know that it's about the potential that the company has in the future, not the performance they have right now.
Absolutely. From my experience, I do have some consulting experience. I noticed that a lot of CEOs, founders, directors, C-level people, they have to deal with sales, marketing, operations, and all that, and that they can share with others and discuss with others, but also it's super difficult on their mindset. Like they very often lack the mental power to actually wake up every day and struggle, because running a business is basically struggling every single day. How important this is, from your perspective, that you have the ability, like a mentor that you can talk to, that can help you whenever you're down, whenever you're feeling that this is probably not gonna end up great, but you still have to wake up, you still have to talk to your employees, and you still have to influence them so they do their job, so the company is moving forward.
Yeah, I think that actually this is something that I was neglecting for a long period of time, and that was really something that actually kept me away from being successful, because I did not pay too much attention to the kind of my mental health and my mental power to be able to do the things. And if you don't take care of yourself, nobody will, right? So you really need to think about actually also some kind of ways you're going to regenerate yourself, how you're actually getting the energy to put it into the company, because this is all what it is about. It's actually energy that you're putting into the company. What happens is the result of the energy you're putting in. And at some point, of course, it's not only about your energy, it's about the energy of your people, right?
Right.
So first, it's about taking care of yourself, but then it's also taking care about your people, right?
Right.
So you need to be able also to provide that to others. And of course, one of the best ways is to have somebody that kind of can look upon what you're doing from a different perspective. Because if you're in this kind of everyday work and running from one place to another and so on, it's really hard to kind of stop for a second and take a bit different perspective of the things you're doing. And that's why I think it's working with somebody that can talk with you and help you actually to get the right perspective, or even a different perspective, is really helpful. And lately I have actually came across an interesting approach called mental power, which is actually coming from the sport. And if you look upon the sport and athletes, this is a super competitive landscape, right? Now, even in the sport, a very small differences are deciding whether you're a winner or not, right? So those are this is a great examples of people that needs to be able constantly to work on a really high level. And it is becoming very popular right now that you hear about sportsmen actually having mental coaches. So not only coaches, but actually mental coaches, right? That take care of their well-being. And I think that in business, this will become and will be really important factor of whether the people are capable of succeeding or not.
Yeah. Just to sum up whatever you said, I did have experience of talking or being a friend of a professional athlete, and that professional athlete was told at the very beginning, before they even started practicing, that whenever you feel you're done, whenever you feel you cannot do anything else because you're tired, you're exhausted, you're probably at 70% or 60%. You still, the mental game that you can implement will get you the results that the body will give up. But if you have strong mental capabilities, or a trainer or a coach, a partner that can help you in that moment, then you are absolutely going to succeed versus people that whenever they feel they cannot do it anymore, they believe it. So yeah, absolutely, the mental power. I think this will be the differentiator of the people that are going to do great in the nearest future versus the people that will give up because they're not gonna know that the mental power is so important. So beautiful.
And there are some things that you cannot buy. Right. So one of the things is your health. So I think that there was Dalai Lama that said once that he doesn't understand people because they're losing health to get money and then spending money to get health.
Try to get back health, but very often it's already too late, right? Yeah.
And this is quite important because building the company, being an entrepreneur, it's actually a long-term game. Not actually about this week, this month, even this year. It's about the years to come.
Right.
And if you're not taking care of yourself, then you'll not be able to work on that high level for so long time.
Yeah, it's like you're using the capabilities and the energy that you have right now that you will be missing in the future, and it's not something that you can just keep doing for a very long time. At some point it will catch up with you, and then you'll be out of that energy and out of health, and all the money in the world cannot help you at that point. So yeah, was absolutely great to be able to talk to you, because we spoke about business, we spoke about mental health, which I didn't really expect that you would have an opinion and you would actually understood how important this is in business, because the founders probably think maybe sales, maybe marketing, maybe the product itself, maybe venture capital, maybe some kind of investors, angel investors, people with knowledge, but they do not think about themselves enough. I think from what you said and from what I experienced, they put all the chips in the game, but they forget about themselves very often, and at some point they are completely burnt out, and they are missing the energy that they need to move forward, to keep going forward.
Yeah, and the worst thing is actually it's not only about them, because if they're working like that, it's also probable that they're doing the same to their team.
Yes,
and that's I don't think it's going nowhere. It's good sometimes to work hard, but you cannot do it constantly. You need to find some kind of a balance.
Yeah, because it is not sustainable to go 110% all the time, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. It was really a great combination of all the possible tips for founders that just started the journey, but also for people that are already going 110%, and maybe it's time for them to go to reduce that and go 80% for the next 3 months just to recover, so they can keep continue changing the world and growing their project. So thank you, Eric. It was awesome. It was really, really good.
Okay, thank you, Paul, and maybe we'll have a chance to do it once again.
We'll see.
Thanks.